Thanks everybody for being here. My name is Fabricio and I'm currently the head of design at Pitch. And we are building presentation software for modern teams and want to enable people to easily turn ideas into presentations while effectively collaborating. Pitch was started in January 2018 by 8 co-founders who, before Pitch, worked together on building Wunderlist, which then later got acquired by Microsoft. The overarching vision, which got the founding team excited, is to make change by bringing ideas to life. And they saw a communication platform mixed with a design tool, which presentation software kind of is, as the most impactful opportunity to do so. So what are we up to right now? Maybe a thing I should have asked earlier. Does anybody here know Pitch, have heard about Pitch? Okay, no, not too bad. Okay, yeah, so what are we up to right now? We've been building and also internally dog feeding Pitch for a couple of months now. And recently we started our limited preview, so we call it. So the limited preview is a long and slow beta throughout which we take the time to listen and learn from teams which we invited. Given our ambitious goals, this phase is really important to us to get things right. And yeah, we're inviting small to medium-sized, modern, agile teams. So if you feel that this description matches your team, please go to pitch.com and sign up. Let's get right to the heart of this talk here. Yeah, so how do we design or work collaboratively at Pitch? I guess everybody's aware why collaboration is important and why, you know, everybody's talking and writing about it nowadays. Bottom line is you end up with a better aligned team, which shares a common understanding of what you're actually trying to build. And ultimately you end up with a better product because you make sure to integrate a more diverse set of opinions and perspectives early on. You remove roadblocks along the way. And in a way, it's funny if you think about it, because back in the days, you know, I mean, back in the days when there were no computers or very little computers, work was inherently much more collaborative when it was physical and you had to build stuff together because you cannot build that many things with just a single person. But then, you know, computers came along and all of a sudden, you know, we find ourselves sitting somewhat, you know, lonely in front of a screen and, you know, doing this kind of sad work. And then, you know, again, a few years later, finally, software is starting to catch up with the wonders of the internet and allowing us to get back towards, again, to, you know, working closer together, except this time spread all across the globe, sitting in front of screens. So let's talk about how we do this new kind of software-facilitated extreme collaboration at Pitch. Yeah, so we are running Pitch in a remote-friendly way, since we are a mix of fully remote, partly remote, and fully on-site people. And we believe in a few guiding principles when it comes to effective collaboration. So for one, we believe in very transparent decision-making processes. We believe that it should be very easy to access information, no matter who you are in the company. We believe in direct communication, again, especially when it comes to decision processes. Clarity on roles, and then also enabling people to act autonomously. And in the following, I would like to give you a few examples of how we make sure to live up to those principles. So first up is always start with the user. I mean, I guess that should be a quite obvious one, right? But although it's so obvious and everybody has already heard about it, I think that this tends to be one of those things that you know, might fall quite quickly under the radar when you're in a fast-paced, early-stage startup environment, and you have all those internal discussions going on with, you know, people throwing in their opinions, and you know, so in the heat of this debate, the user might kind of get lost sometimes. And we do a few things to make sure that, you know, we try to keep users in our minds. So on the one hand, we conduct interviews on an ongoing basis. So we also have an interview guide, meaning that anybody in the company can actually take the interview guide and go out and interview people who we might know from his network, which happen to be presentation software users, of course. And then another tool that we have established now over the past couple of months, oh, that's interesting, the colors here are similar, that should not happen, is that we have created those 4 personas, which are based on the ongoing user interviews that we're doing, on broader market research surveys, and then also based on the actual target market niche that we're trying to get at. And not only are those personas useful when it comes to thinking about features, they're also a great tool to establish a common ground across the team. Because ultimately, no matter if you are an engineer, a designer, a PM, bottom line is you want to provide value to people, and those personas kind of are a good reminder of who you're actually doing all the stuff for. Next up is a single source of truth, and as initially mentioned, we think that it's very important to make information easily accessible across the company. And the tool which currently helps us the most with this is Notion. I don't know, are you familiar with Notion? A little bit, okay. Yeah, so yeah. So it's an all-in-one team collaboration app that kind of unifies documents, spreadsheets, and a few more things into one singular app. Oh, by the way, all the stuff is blurred out because this is supposed to be the roadmap, but obviously I can show this here right now, so apologies for more pixelation that's going to come. So we use Notion for two major purposes. On the one hand, as a general wiki, or intranet to store company infos, have a directory of who is working at the company with a short introduction about themselves, market research, and so on. And then we also use it as our main road mapping tool to prioritize and document features. And especially, when new people are also starting at Pitch, one of the feedback that we usually get is that people are very content with how easy it is to actually access information because everything is just there. You can search it, and it's also fairly well structured. So I guess this is a pretty good pointer for that. And I guess the cool thing about Notion is that it really combines a very easy to use, lightweight text editor with some layout capabilities, but then also with very powerful tables, or they call it databases. And I think this mix is pretty cool because it enables you to be very flexible about, how you structure things in your company. And maybe also another interesting thing to note here as a side note. So together with also Coda and Airtable, Notion is belongs to a relatively new category of tools which all try to attack spreadsheets from different angles. And I would definitely, if you're into products, I would definitely recommend to check out all of them because although they at its core do a kind of similar thing, they still have very different takes and different focus points while doing so. So yeah, definitely interesting stuff. Next principle or topic is getting people on the same page. So I just mentioned how we use Notion as our go-to tool for any kind of information. And when it comes to keeping people in sync, we also, as a company, use a few more tools and methods. First of all, using our own product Pitch, we created a guide which explains our mission, company values, and also the team structure. So this is something for new people that onboard the company, but then also more of a general reference guide. Then we do weekly bulletins. So by the end of each week, all teams basically get together. We create one big presentation, and everybody is contributing whatever they've been working on the past week. So this is also a great way, again, to dogfood and also stress test the app ourselves because a lot of people are simultaneously editing, so that's pretty hardcore. And then one last thing we also use Pitch actually for is when we are working on new features or have ideas and want to communicate them on a slightly broader and more polished scale to basically get buy-in and really explain what this is all about. And as a design tool, next up, we're using Figma. Are you familiar with Figma? Which sounds kind of funny in German, I guess. So Figma is just very brief intro, cross-platform design tool for teams. And I think it was pretty much the first of its kind to unify a couple of things. So a very solid design tool, but also a collaboration tool, together with a prototyping tool and engineering hands-off. So that's a lot of stuff. I think nowadays other tools are also catching up. So I think Sketch with Sketch Cloud is also getting there. Adobe XD also has plans, so everybody's also getting there. But I think still today, this is kind of a pain point, right? If you want to, you're also using InVision, right? So having stuff spread across different tools is just a bit obnoxious, and Figma gets rid of that, so that's great. And another part which I think Figma used quite heavily in the marketing, and which is something that people also used to talk a bit about jokingly, that many people can work in the same file. Yeah, it's kind of cool, but I think that's more of a gimmick. The real strength of Figma is actually that you can super easily share stuff with others. So you just have to basically do two clicks, you have a link, and then you just post it somewhere, and anybody else can then access the design source file or prototype. It's the same thing. And a nice side effect, I think, is also that you're actually exposing a lot of people within the same company to a design tool, which then also leads to people actually starting to get curious about it and maybe also using it on their own. So I think this is also kind of a cool thing about it. Next up is making it really easy to for everybody to provide feedback. So Slack, surprise, surprise, is our main general communication platform. We also use it as our primary channel, or one of our primary channels, I guess, and entry point to post all sorts of product updates and also to gather feedback. So we're a company with a lot of people with a product mindset, and I guess also an eye for good work. And this also leads to a lot of people actually wanting to contribute and, you know, make their opinions heard, basically. Yeah, and so one thing that we have there is essentially, I think I have to skip two things. Oh no, actually this one, yeah. So we have the product channel. And this is a place where basically anybody within the company can post, can make posts related to the product. There are some light rules in place when it comes to the post. So, you know, when you make the post, first up, you should just write what you're actually going to talk about. So is it an improvement that you want to see? Is it a bug report, or is it a feature idea? You should do a brief description, and then ideally be as visual as possible. So maybe, you know, add an image if it's a bug or whatever, so that people quickly get whatever you're talking about. And since everybody within the company will see those posts, this is also usually a good way to just, you know, get a sense of what things are moving the needle, right? So, for example, if you have an idea for a feature, to see if there's buy-in, if people have the same opinion, if people would like to see this make it happen. And yeah, until recently, this kind of stuff has been one of our main sources, I guess, to generally just move the product forward. But since recently, we also have started to onboard teams, so we will obviously start to listening much more to voices other than our own when it comes to improving things. When designers, sorry again for the pixelation, if designers need feedback on concepts, they would, you know, not only share links to Figma prototypes, but they would oftentimes also record short GIFs or videos to better illustrate flows. And then if you need to explain something that needs more context, where things just require explanation in order to, you know, make an informed round of feedback about it. We usually use video recordings together with talking things through. And for this right now, we use Loom. So this is basically just a screen recorder where you can, after you've finished recording the video, can quickly, again, just generate the link, post it, and it's super easy to jump into. Another small kind of things that we do, again, all in Slack, is, for example, in this case here, if you want to have, like, you know, quick decision things. So in this case, I think it's like about empty state illustrations, and one of our illustrators, Anna, just posted two different visuals, and it's just asking one or two. So it's just slight variations, and then people would, you know, just react with the number emojis to get a sense of what's moving the needle. And another small tool that we like using are polls occasionally. So this is, I think, useful if you are working on a problem, you're having certain assumptions about things, but then maybe you're not sure if this is just your, you know, very own biased perspective on things. So you can just ask a simple question and see how what other people think about it. Next up is involving fresh eyes. So yeah, it's important for us to get qualitative and fresh opinions as often as possible. And over the past months, there were two major things which mainly contributed to that. So on the one hand, we worked very close with a product design agency over a couple of months. Now, this might sound a bit crazy because, you know, we are a full design team, so why would you hire, you know, a product design agency to collaborate on your product? But it actually turned out to be a really great exercise because it again helped us to remove more our own biases. And then also, you know, they did challenge a lot of our assumptions that we have been making up until this point. And not only were we able to generate lots of different concepts and UI approaches for different things, we also collaborated with a team which in the end was also able to give us super relevant feedback because they would also be one of our target audiences. So it was kind of a two-sided thing. Yeah, so during the kickoff, we asked them to start fresh and, you know, not hold back with any questions or, you know, and take any of our assumptions for granted. And this led them, on the one hand, to conduct their very own user research and getting back to us with a presentation of their findings. And then also getting back to us with a broad range of design suggestions, ranging from very direct small things which were based on the product and how it looked like by that time, but then also more radical things where they would propose new kind of interaction models in form of small prototypes. It's also interesting to look at how the collaboration generally worked, because in the beginning we started our collaboration so close that the design team almost felt like an extension of our own team. So we were almost, sitting together virtually. So we would work together in the same Figma file. Whenever they would put together new flows, we had a shared Slack channel. They would directly, ask questions. And then around halfway, once we established kind of a common ground and, had a better sense of the directions and things we want to go for from different perspectives, they would then start to work a bit more detached, so that we would also allow them to explore a bit deeper and, not just always have to react on things that we say. And during those times, we would usually have a sync for once a week. So once a week, they would basically set up a call. We would go through all the things in form of a presentation that they prepared. And then on a separate session, we would then have another call with in-depth answers from our end. So this was quite intense for us as well, because we essentially had to block out pretty much a day every week just to gather feedback and align ourselves on the things that were thrown at us. The other, I guess, rather cheap method to doing things and to get fresh eyes on something without generating a lot of overhead would be to do usability tests, or internal usability tests, or usability tests with people we know. So in this case, we use a tool called Lookback. And we also do, by the way, I think this has also become sort of a tradition. So whenever somebody new starts working at Pitch, they would now usually be grabbed for a usability test. I think there was also another one today. And what's really cool about Lookback is that it makes, again, this whole process quite easy and low effort, because in the end you can run self-hosted tests. And what you do is you just put together your test, you write up a description, you provide a link where the person should go to in order to do the test, and then you just share a link. So the person just has to follow the link. And in our case, since we do have a cross-platform app, which is also a web app, the web app itself would open in the browser, and the people could then just directly run the test. And then also we have, for features, usually we have branch builds, so meaning we have versions of the app which contain that particular feature, but it's not the version that everybody is already using in the testing environment. And we also can then use those branch builds to essentially run those tests running Lookback. So that's quite neat to do. So usually when we watch those sessions, we would then take notes, so what you can do there is you just play back the video. Whenever you hit enter, you get a little text input, and then you can, just make notes. And this way it's very easy to just understand where things are happening throughout the test for others if they want to watch through it. And what's also pretty cool is you can, if this is the timeline of the video, it's super easy to share specific parts out. So if you're trying to make a point or trying to explain to somebody something you saw, or if you even want to make a compilation of, hey, look, we have, 5 people did this same thing here, which is a pattern that emerges, and maybe you need to take action upon that, then this is also really easy to do with Lookback. Okay, next up is keep reimagining yourself. So we try to be as responsive as possible when it comes to improving processes within the company. And in a way, I guess we see the company almost like a product in a way, because it's also something you can reflect on and that you can reiterate on if you look at the processes that are happening. And we also have the advantage, I guess, that we're still relatively small, so change is much easier done than in a company with 100, 150 plus people. So in the very beginning, I think one thing that kind of illustrates this point of keeping changing is how we organized our workflows within the team. So in the beginning, we basically just had the design team, the engineering team, and we had big features. And those big features, they were fairly broad in a way, fairly broadly defined. And they could really take anything from, or working on them could take anything from a few weeks to a couple of months, really depending on how much feature creep there would also happen. And we improved this as a first step by just saying, okay, let's break things down. Let's make the big features tiny features. We literally called them like that. And we kept the time for each feature, or a rough guideline, I guess, was that the feature would take about 3 weeks to get shipped and done. And this worked pretty good as a first step. obviously it was a big difference versus the first one because we got a lot more things done, a lot more things shipped, and the overall morale in the team was also much better. But yeah, then at some point, again, we figured that maybe we could do things better, because the problem about this approach here was that it really encouraged people to jump from one thing on the next. So there was not too much feeling of responsibility for a certain feature, but more of a, okay, cool, it's done. Hey, there are like a ton of more things on the roadmap that you could take on, so let's do it. And yeah, so the bottom line is there was a lack of ownership, and also making sure that things were properly qualitatively tested. And again, in the way how we thought that we could maybe make things better there is to restructure again. So what we introduced was during our most recent restructuring session were kind of interdisciplinary teams. So we have a mix of engineers and designers working in the same team, and each team is assigned to a specific product area. And product area means that you're working on a bunch of features which are all kind of tied together because it just makes sense to work on them logically. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure that we will keep changing things around every now and then, because improving things is good. And then we have the next up, designing in the open. You might have noticed that I didn't talk too much about the design processes itself. And the reason for that is that we believe that the design process is something that the company is kind of doing as a whole. And yeah, it's something that really we all just try to practice and do. And we as designers are really just there to facilitate and help with that process in a way. And we believe that the best way to do all of this is, to keep things as open as possible, to try to have everybody in the loop as long as we can, because we are not that huge. So it's actually a great thing if you're able to do that kind of stuff. And on the way, maybe also educating people a bit in a sense of why we would do one decision over the other from a design perspective. Yeah, so already also lined out briefly the tools that we're using to do all of that. So Slack and Figma together with deeper descriptions on Notion, and then also screen recordings facilitate this whole process the most. And yeah. Oops. And in addition to those things, so what we also do as a design team, on the one hand, we run open design reviews every Monday. And so when we recently switched to this new team structure, this even became, I guess, more necessary from our perspective, because designers got now distributed to different teams together with engineers. So there's definitely the need to, just come together as a design team and share deep feedback about different things. And this design review is also open, so anybody in the company can join. And sometimes also engineers would obviously join in and share their prototypes and concepts, which is, I think, a great thing. And also goes back to the point that, design is not the same thing that is just solely for, designers themselves, but actually something for the entire company. So in summary, this is how we do collaboration at Pitch. I hope I could give you a good overview. Yeah, so we approach the design process in a very open and inclusive way, while using the latest generation of collaborative tools, not only because they're immensely helpful, but also because I think that they also help us to better understand how our product will fit into this whole ecospace of tools. Yeah, thanks a lot for listening, and I'm done.
Thank you very much, Fabricio.